And that giant cacophony tells you you're back with the Power of Three podcast. It's time to talk the plastic fantastic, the magical bits of oil that have been solidified that we love to discuss, look at, play with, have on our shelves, and generally just admire and love. And in some cases, some people out there worship them like they're temples of God, but that's up to them. I'm Kenny Smith, and I'm joined by our very own plastic god. It's Mr. Alistair Dewar.
Sorry. Hi, Kenny. I'm laughing away because, first of all, you called me yet again a giant cacophony, which I was slightly offended at, and then we got on to lumps, and it took me right the way back to the weekend. With
yes, you did mention that the other day. Message. So, yeah. Do you know, that's just brought back a memory. Yeah. The first time I went to the Glasgow Doctor Who group was in January 1990. I went with my friend Mark Docherty. We turned up at the Woodside Library in Glasgow. We didn't know anyone else there. We went in and they were setting up at the front of the room. There was a VHS and a telly because they were going to watch Earthshock. This is 1990, so obviously not everybody had copies, no official releases. And they also set up a model TARDIS console.
Yeah.
And Mark and I genuinely thought, are they going to get down and worship the console?
People do like a good console. I see our chat about consoles the other week caused no end of consternation, and there was it's funny, you get all these people that talk with authority about stuff that they clearly know nothing about. So there was some guy saying, this is how you should do the console, you should do that, and he was moaning about the fact that the speaker was in the wall. The reason I wanted to put the speaker in the wall is so that the sound is good, because you put a speaker in something quite small with no resonance chamber and no room, which there wouldn't be, the sound's going to be crap. And for me, the sound of the TARDIS should fill the entire console room. So rather than it coming out of a crappy wee speaker, it should be coming out nice and loud. That was the reasoning. And then, and then there was a lot of people saying, well, if you got rid of this feature and that feature and this feature and you just had 4 walls and a console, it would be fine. And I was like, well, that's not the toy I want to make. And it's not a toy I think we could reasonably sell. I want to make a good TARDIS console, not the cheapest possible TARDIS console. So, like, if you want a cheap TARDIS console, go and buy one off eBay or Etsy, like, because that's what you're proposing. So
yeah, that's what I've done. I've bought one, and it's lovely.
Oh, it's great, and that's cool, and a lot of people are happy with that. And it's like the TARDISes with electronics in them. Sometimes, most people, I would imagine, are going to pick it up maybe twice a year and kind of listen to it and then probably put it back down. But it's in there if you want it, and it's quite good fun if it takes you back to when you were a kid and you didn't have sound in your TARDISes that you'd built out of cardboard, or well, certainly me, it was Lego, cardboard, whatever.
Yeah.
So, it's that thing of, the toy I want to make is one that I want people to go, holy crap, that's amazing. I don't want them to go, they made this the cheapest way possible. Or, and there's, as I've always said, there's, he pays your money, he takes your pick. And there is nothing wrong, by the way, with stuff that you buy off Etsy and other places, because it's all handcrafted and it's all very well made for the most part.
Yeah, the one that I've got the Davison console.
You showed me that one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I did, and it's lovely.
The jelly mold.
Yeah, which I can see why you call it that. Having looked at it since then, it's like, yeah, I can see what you mean.
Technically, Kenny, it's 2 jelly molds because it's the same 2 jelly molds,
but just slightly varied.
3 times
still
each.
Cool.
What was quite fascinating, I saw a picture of it at the BBC. It's obviously either between series or more likely, sadly, after the series had finished. But I saw a picture of it as it was leant up against the wall and some of the panels were off. And it was just, you could tell it was just 1 inch tube steel that it was essentially made from, and it looked a bit sad and forlorn. It's always a shame seeing stuff that's been in production that then is scrapped or, been decommissioned. Nowadays it'd be stolen
Yeah.
and
Or parts, individual buttons would be sold off at tenner a go.
yeah, the individual buttons would be placed in some sort of, marketing material and sold off. You're quite right. But yeah, we're not here to
this
talk
is not
about
the
consoles.
Console podcast this week anyway. And yes, we are here to talk about your latest creation, your latest release, the Wrarth Warriors from Doctor Who and the Star Beast. So suppose, Al, this is one that's been hiding in plain sight, given that it was revealed at the Toy Fair in 2024.
It kind of has been hiding in plain sight in the sense. Again, it's always the comments that you see. I saw another comment today with somebody saying, "Oh, character options have got tons and tons of stuff hidden away that's data, and they must have years worth of stuff that's never made it to market." The reality is, there's not a lot. But the other comment he made was, it's right in that when it's data, because most sculpting is digital these days, it's quite cost effective. And he's right. The cost of making the sculpt or commissioning the sculpt is relatively inexpensive versus cutting steel. So to that point, he was right. The point about having tons of this stuff hidden away we don't have very much at all. So yes, you're right. Hiding in plain sight is I guess, right in that I had it. The reason it ended up at Toy Fair, funnily enough, was because we originally were going to have the plush Meep, the Doctor, Ruby as figures, and that was it. And I kind of thought, Jesus, that cabinet's going to be a bit empty. So I very quickly got the Wrarth, which had been done by Ed, printed out, and I got it painted up, and it was shoved in the cabinet with a big question mark over its head, what was going to happen. Because at that point, all we'd committed to was really the Ruby and 15th Doctor figures, and that was it. So that was the commitment in terms of figures for that year. The Wrarth wasn't even... In fact, truth be told, the Wrarth shouldn't really have been commissioned, but I had done it. I'd essentially asked them to... I'd commissioned it before the brakes were kind of put on and it became a bit cautious. So in actual fact, the Wrarth was around before the Meep was, funnily enough. But it's such a massive bloody figure that I kind of knew that if I ever did release it, I'd have to probably release it as a twin pack. And then when we did the Meep, because it's a bit like selling Yoda, isn't it? The Meep's very tiny, and you kind of think, oh well, he's a wee thing, so we'll have to put him with something else. And we obviously had the 14th Doctor as an option, so that was the reasoning behind that. But yeah, it was. So it didn't actually become anything other than data. Keep coming back to your original question. It was hiding in plain sight, but nothing was action. So it did kind of finally make it from data to tooling model about a year ago, I suppose, something like that. So it was around for a while, and my delight at so when I had it converted into the tooling model, I got the CAD back, and it actually went incredibly smoothly. I'd worked out where I wanted all of the articulation points. I kind of realized that it was a staggering amount of articulation points that I was dealing with. But it was great on that one, getting the tooling model back and photographs of the tooling model, because I kind of saw this thing and I was like, oh, that's bloody fantastic. It's going to look amazing. And actually, I did cheat slightly. I slightly upsized them. So when I printed them out, I was kind of like, is it imposing enough? So I think it's 5% upsized over what it should be. But it's if you put a figure next to it and bend the figure's legs into the guy in the costume's position, you're really not very far off on I would say in reality, it's probably about 3% bigger than it.
Were you there to do the scans yourself? Because they look impressive costumes.
So it wasn't scanned. All we got was the turnaround. In fact, they weren't even turnaround images. This is what happens when you sort of start with a new production. I say they weren't turnaround images. They were kind of a weird hybrid because I've still got them in the box folder, so I've still got access to them. But the only costume we got reference to was Zogroth. So Ed did the sculpt just from the visual material. There was no scan data or any kind of 3D data like we'd got with the Meep, albeit the Meep data was essentially discarded because it didn't line up with what was on screen. But yeah, we didn't get any of that with the Wrarth. The Wrarth were done straight by Ed as a sculpt from reference material that he sort of got access to. So it was a bit of a fight over that about, can we get high-res pictures? What do you need them for? To do sculpting? Well, you don't need to download them. Yes, we do. Why do you need to download them? Because we need to drop them into the sculpting program so that we can use them as a background image. So you have all these sort of arguments that you kind of think, 20 years down the line, you would imagine that people would just trust you when you say you need something as a high-res download. But everybody that comes in, everybody's new toy box is kind of like learning from scratch. So when you say, can I have some turnaround images? They're going like, what? Like, oh, well, here we go. So yeah, I mean, and Ed did a great job, but essentially once he'd handed over the sculpt, it was then parked for a year, maybe slightly longer, before I then took it and developed a tooling model and got all that done, the articulation, got that done, got the first shots, etc. In fact, to the point where I had to email him to say, there's something coming to you in the post. It might be a bit of a surprise because he hadn't seen it since he'd handed it over as a sculpt, 2 and a bit years probably previously. So it's always good to preempt people when there's something coming.
Just in case, like, what?
Anyway, that was a very long-winded answer to a very simple question. Sorry.
So I take it that this was a fairly easy decision, given that you had that data, but to do something as a character exclusive, and there we go. It's something that's fairly recent, and they were a very popular creation at the time, and indeed still are.
Yeah. So there was certainly a plan, and obviously there's a budget, and certainly on that first year, the budget was for 5 figures, and we had to work out which figures they were going to be, how much they were going to cost to tool up, what each of the sets was going to cost from the factory, and then the budget that was going to require versus the return on investment. So that was done. So for the entire release, which is why I kind of came out of that knowing that I had essentially 5 figures for the year, more or less.
It's also quite unusual in that we've had so many figures from the one story, which is something that's not really happened since the Matt Smith era.
Yeah, well, that's true. I think that is true. And I've seen that comment from a few other people.
It's not a complaint, I have to clarify.
No, I certainly love... I love the Star Beast. I mean, I think the 60th stories, certainly for me, were a real breath of fresh air. I don't make any bones about it. So when the 60th stories came along, and I really loved those stories. I loved the Star Beast, a nostalgia aspect with that one, for sure, having grown up with the comic. But I thought the interpretation and the actual story I really engaged with that one. Wide Blue Yonder, funnily enough, wasn't as fond of, but it's now one of my favorites. I think that story is fantastic. It's got a real uneasiness to it. It's got sort of aspects of Sapphire and Steel and all those sort of slightly edgier sort of Doctor Who's. So I really like that. But there's less that you could do with that second story, in the sense that the Nowhere things are essentially the Doctor and Donna, but with, and we didn't have a Donna, but with rubbery bits or longer bits or whatever. So the story was great, but there wasn't a great deal to hang it on. There was the little robot that marches down the corridor, but even I think the brand team at the time sort of said, you probably don't want to do him because he doesn't do a lot. He just
He walks very slowly.
they didn't go into details because obviously we always go in going, what have you got? What are we going to do? Blah, blah, blah. But they were pretty upfront and said, probably wouldn't do him. He doesn't really do a lot, which I think was a good steer. So yeah, there was a bunch of stuff, and then there was the giggle, which again, I don't think there was a huge amount to do there other than possibly the toy maker.
But he's got about 3, 4 different costumes throughout it. No consistent look.
Yeah, and I liked it, but it's much more difficult to, again, not knowing about it, it's much more difficult to hang, you know, if you're going to spend your money anywhere, what are you going to spend it on? A big bug-eyed monster and a small, scary psycho alien? Or are you going to spend it on, Robert Patrick Harris in a couple of nice outfits? I know where I'm putting my money.
Mm-hmm.
So that didn't really happen. So we ended up with the Wrarth, the Meep, who went very nicely with the 14th in his jacketless form. And then obviously, then we had the Master that came in there, and the Pertwee, which was actually a head that Ed had again done years previously and was kind of almost dragged out of storage. Weirdly, that wasn't a product I was keen on doing because it combined the Sonic with a figure, and it's very Marmite. Some people loved that, and some people really didn't love that.
I see. I thought it was great. I thought you've got the figure and you've got the toy to go with it. You can pretend you're the Third Doctor while you're looking at him.
It's something we'd toyed with for a long time, but my point at the time, and I kind of still stand by it, was it would be Marmite. I did say that. I said the hardcore collectors who don't want the Sonic are going to get pissed off, and the role play collectors might end up with because it was a metallized Sonic, which is great for role playing cosplay, but they maybe don't collect figures. So I was kind of like, you stand the risk of pissing a few people off with that approach.
Yeah. So here's a mini Ask Al. One question from me. Could we see more of those in future Vortex editions, Doctor and Sonics?
Well, interestingly, I looked at possibly doing it with the 10th Doctor Sonic and a 10th Doctor, but the tooling is actually almost worn out. And given the cost of spending, do you want to spend 35 grand remaking a Sonic Screwdriver, or do you want to spend the money on a figure? I balked at the idea of spending it on the Sonic. And we sell a lot of Sonics, but I can still make the existing Sonic. It is literally on its last legs, but it wouldn't survive what we needed to do with it to make it metallicized. So just for parity, I would prefer not to, if I'm honest. I'd be interested to hear what people think about that. And also, you paint yourself in a bit of a corner. It kind of made sense with the Third Doctor. It possibly would make sense with the Fourth Doctor. The Fifth Doctor, there's not a lot I can do with that figure to make it Vortex other than do the jacketless version. Yeah. And then it's a jacketless Vortex edition, not a full Fifth Doctor edition. And then once you're into the 6th, 7th, 8th, you don't really have the option. And then the 9th Doctor, albeit we redid it for B&M, is a bit compromised. The retool of the head and the jacket for that one wasn't as good as I would have liked. It wasn't bad, it was at that point where we were having a problem data transfer between what we were handing over and what the toolmaker was using, and they cocked it up. So Yeah, it's an interesting one. A Fourth Doctor one, I think, maybe.
Season 18 Tom with hat. There's your variation.
With hat. With hat. With hat.
Hat's the way you do it.
That's the way you do it, Mr. Polly. Yeah. Did he use the Sonic? I suppose he did with season.
Yeah.
Yeah, he must.
Yeah, he's there, uses it on a couple of occasions.
Yeah, he did.
Even though Chris Bigmead and JNT weren't big fans of it, but still gets used here and there.
Yeah. It's a bit weird, isn't it? That you wouldn't have. I mean, there's two ways to look at that. One is it keeps the action moving along because every time he gets locked up, you don't have to keep him locked up. Or you think it's overused and it's too much of a get out of jail, literally, card.
Mhm.
But the get out of jail, literally, card is just a way of moving the action along, I think. So the sonic screwdriver kind of made sense. Did that answer your question?
Yes, that does. That does. Ish. That's good. We'll take that.
It's a good story, by the way. Big Finish Audios. We always come back to Big Finish Audios. Ish.
It
That's
is.
a very good story.
Phil Pascal. Brilliant. Clever. I like it.
Very clever.
Recommended if you haven't listened. I think it's available $3.99 from bigfinish.com on download. So,
bargain, sir.
Suits you and I. So yeah, let's go back to the Wrarths. Obviously, there's a twin pack there, and there are some lovely subtle differences between the pair of them.
There are, and it's interesting. On the costume themselves, they did exactly the same thing. They obviously wanted them to look different. So the two fronts of the carapaces are slightly different. The dents in the front, one looks a little bit like Orion belt and that kind of, well, Orion, the star system. And then one has a slightly different number of dinks and indents. It is subtle, but yeah, I thought it was better than people saying, oh, it's two of them in the same pack. So I thought, oh, I'll make them different. So yeah, they are slightly different. And they have the lovely light pipe eyes.
Yes, they look glorious. That was a real surprise.
It was good. It doesn't work quite as well. The way with light pipe normally works is you have a big catchment area and it funnels it down to a smaller area and it glows. The Wrarth are the complete reverse. They have a small catchment area for light on the top of the head and then big eyes. So it doesn't work as well as I would have liked, but it's about as good as we could have made it without the whole back of the head being transparent, which I didn't like. But it does mean that you can put a light source above it and shine it down, and you have that nice little bit where his eyes are lit and then they fade out. But also it gives the eyes a bit of depth being the transparent, which I think is pretty good.
Yeah. So, Al, again, we've got the Vortex range and it's gloriously distinctive packaging.
Yeah, we always try and do we always try and do the packaging with something a little bit exciting in it. Funnily enough, the Wrarth packaging is probably the one that I had the least to do with. We kind of struggled with what the options were for it, which was kind of like the Wrarth in a street, the Wrarth in a factory, the Wrarth floating outside a window, the Wrarth in an underground car park. It was slightly more limiting on the insert, so I gave that one to Jason, and he did a sterling job of sort of cleaning up the insert that's in the back of it. But yeah, it's cool, and obviously with them being so big, it's a bigger pack, but it's quite narrow, sort of front to back, and that's been one of the good and interesting things this year, is actually because it's all been different doctors and different eras and stuff. All the packs have ended up, and it's a lovely style guide, so all the packs have ended up having a slight difference and sort of feel about them, even the B&M ones. So yeah, been cool.
Yep. And you did say when last we spoke that it's your favourite release of 2025.
I think so, yeah. It's just impressive when you see it in hand. You always have that thing when a new figure gets released where you've been looking at it for a long time and you think it's flipping fantastic, and then about an hour before it goes live you go, oh crap, is it fantastic? And then you get severe angst about whether it is as good as you'd think it is in your head. But with that one, The minute I had a couple of them on my desk standing over the meep, I just was like, it's amazing. And in hand, photographs will never quite do it justice, but in hand and with the articulation, it's a brilliant monster. And it's as I think I've said before, it's the literal interpretation of the bug-eyed monster in Doctor Who, but they're good. Whereas the nice fluffy little creature is evil. So it's a brilliant story, and they're a great, and that's a hell of a monster for a Doctor Who figure line when you get two of those boys lined up. And the thing I was mucking around with, and Nick and I, Nick's created a set of wings for them as well, which you can get through Star One Props, people. They're almost a perfect candidate because they're essentially a police force to kind of customize and build extra equipment for. In fact, we were kind of looking at them with sort of like, take that blaster and kind of redesign it and make like a heavy weapon blaster, or give them almost like a sort of crash helmet type thing. So we had a bunch of sketches when we were just mucking around with stuff about it. And it's one of those figures where you could give them sort of big riot shields or stuff. So they're almost a perfect candidate for customization as well, which isn't always the case. So yeah, I think they're cool. I think they're pretty cool. And I'd love to see some Wrarth inspired equipment that kind of went with them. I think there's just somebody will do it. Somebody out there, somebody like Scott from Gallifrey Customs will do something crazy with the Wrarth. I guarantee it. But yeah, be neat.
Brilliant fan creativity at its best.
Yes,
So
very much so.
Excellent. Well, Al, thank you once again. It has been great fun as ever.
Thank you. It's been fabulous to come on and talk about Wrarth Warriors. And as always, if anyone's got any questions, I'd love to hear, or opinions. You know, if you've got your Wrarth Warrior and you've got an opinion on it, good or bad, send it in.
Absolutely. We've got our Facebook page, so we'll be posting this episode link on there. So please come and like the Power of 3 podcast page and share your comments. And of course, we will share them with Al, and you will perhaps respond to them in a future Ask Al.
Definitely. Yes. Ask Al. Yes, the more questions, the merrier. We Kenny and I like myth busting, so let's keep busting myths. That's the only way to do it.
Absolutely. So remember, if you've enjoyed what we've done, you can give us a review on your podcatcher of choice. And of course, we have social media, not just Facebook. We have got Twitter, where we're at Power of 3 Pod with the number 3. And we have Blue Sky, where we are at Finished Zine, FINISHEDZINE. Or if you're in the States, that's ZINE. Just thought I'd translate for our American listeners.
Nice. I like that.
There we go.
Yeah, that was impressive.
Excellent. Well, Al, I was thinking, because we always like to play with a bit of music,
yes,
I've thought of one that might work, because given that this is the second release relating to the first of the Tennant specials, you could almost say we could play something from Star Beast 2, The Wrath of Al. I mean, Star Trek.
Are we going full James Horner on this?
Yeah, let's get Horner. I'm Horner. Horner. Moose Tea featuring Hot and Juicy. Such a hit from 1998.
And on that bombshell, folks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.